I want to start with a thought experiment. I'm going to show you some details about 3 different companies. And I just want you to imagine in your mind, you don't say it out loud, but just think about what company I'm describing here for a sec. So the first one, discount retailer, started in the 50s, brought ordinary low prices to ordinary towns, decimated Main Street, small towns, and had a really sophisticated IT systems, and $1 grew to $6,000 over 1970 to 85. Everyone have an idea? Don't say it out loud. Think about it in your head. Who is that company? Second, company started in the 1970s, point-to-point airlines focused on the southwestern part of the United States. No hubs, quick gate turnaround times, friendly flight attendants. So just think in your mind about what company that is. And the third one, online retailer, going to be the largest online retailer in the world, low prices on all kinds of items, free shipping, one of the fastest companies to ever hit 50 million in revenue, hottest IPOs of the late 90s. You want to have an idea? And now just think about, what do these companies have in common? Again, don't say it out loud, just what do we think they have in common? All right, so now we'll just say them out loud. So on the count of 3, the first one, 1, 2, 3 is obviously Ames Department Stores. Everyone get that one? The point-to-point airline in the southwestern United States, I'm sure everyone got this one. You could say it out loud again, as PSA. And the third one, the online retailer that was the fastest company to hit 50 million in revenue. Everyone got this one, buy.com. Anyone go 3 for 3? So what do these 3 companies actually have in common? What they actually have in common are 3 things. The first one is that each company had the exact right strategy at the exact right time, as evidenced by the fact that the company you thought you were thinking of, Walmart, Southwest, and Amazon, are 3 of the best performing businesses of our generation. So right strategy, right place, right time. That's one thing that all 3 had in common. The second thing that they all 3 have in common is they all went bankrupt. And the third thing they have in common is that they all went bankrupt for the exact same reason, the exact same behavior. And by the way, it's a behavior, I hate to say it, that probably everyone in this room is taking on to some extent right now. And that's the reason they all went bankrupt. And I'll tell you what that is in a minute, because obviously we're going to correct that. If I'm on stage at a growth summit, I'm going to be talking about one thing. And I only have one thing I talk about, and it is how to become the best in the world. Last year, we had 3, for those of you who may remember, there were 3 tenets of becoming best in the world at like 100,000 feet. That is psychology, imagination, and time frame. So psychology is giving yourself permission to set a goal to become the best in the world, and then translate that goal into a tangible metric that you can actually measure. So it's one thing for Alpine to say, we want to be the best performing private equity firm, but those are just words on a website until we actually have a metric. So the first part is, define for yourselves what is best in the world mean for you, and translate that into a metric. Imagination is, if you're going to be the best in the world, you're going to have to imagine a world that doesn't yet exist. Because if it did, then you wouldn't be the best in the world. And you have to actually schedule time for your imagination. And the third one, time frame, is you have to put things on your calendar today. As Mark said last night, you have to plant oak trees today that are going to yield shade in the future. So psychology, imagination, and time frame are the 3 kind of pillars of becoming the best in the world. So today we're going to go from 100,000 feet down to like 30,000 feet. We're going to talk about how to do that for growth specifically. And so over the last 26 years and 23 years at Alpine, we've come up with 3 principles that will yield organic growth. And it's only 6 words you need to remember. So the first one is, you need an ideal customer, you need an irresistible offer, and you need Operation Crush. What the hell is Operation Crush? I'll tell you in a little bit. All right, so let's go back to the Walmart and Southwest. Let's go back to this. So what happened? So Ames department stores and Walmart. Ames actually had a big head start over Walmart. They started first, but they did the mistake that everybody in business makes, that they just expanded too quickly. Why would they do that? Well, because they wanted to have a huge TAM. Who doesn't want to have a huge TAM? Total addressable market. So their total addressable market was the entire United States. They had some success, and then they scaled. They went small towns, big towns, small stores, big stores, urban, rural, and they really had no advantage because they diffused their effort a little bit too much. Walmart opened their first 24 stores in Northwest Arkansas. What does that mean? It meant that they knew that customer extraordinarily well. They knew what cameo they wanted when duck hunting season started. They knew every single thing about that customer. Then they could buy, because they had 24 stores, they could buy those products in bulk and get massive discounts. They could put distribution centers that would serve a densely populated store base. Walmart got to the point after 24 stores where they could offer products at retail that other companies they could offer products at retail that other companies couldn't even buy at wholesale. So they could sell products cheaper than anyone else could buy products. So they built an impenetrable moat because they didn't try to expand too quickly, too fast. So the great irony is when you do less and you're more focused, you actually are going to become the best in the world. Ames went bankrupt. Walmart is the largest retailer in the world with incredible statistics, $76 spent for every person on the planet. PSA and Southwest is the same. PSA started in California, and they were successful, just like Ames. But then they expanded everywhere. They went to a hub and spoke model. They got rid of, they went to every state in the U.S. Southwest, believe it or not, 20 years after founding, still really was a predominantly Texas-based market. Southwest was making money with $13 fares in Texas. That's cheaper than you could take the bus. And then they expanded, and PSA went out of business. Southwest is the number one airline, more profits than all other airlines combined. Is actually the number one performing stock on the NASDAQ over a 30-year period. You're seeing a pattern here. Buy.com, they offered all kinds of stuff. Amazon said, we're only going to offer books for the first 2 years. Why would you ever shop at Amazon? Well, because they had every book on the planet and they'd ship it to you for free. Why would you shop at Buy.com? What was new? What was different? What was unique? They had all these products, but they weren't actually good at anything. They sold at a discount. Amazon's been one of the best performing stocks in the world. So this is best described by Bruce Lee, who says, I fear not the person who's practiced one kick or 10,000 kicks. I fear the person who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. You may hear us say this, about what is our one kick. Northwest Arkansas was one kick 10,000 times. What happens when you focus on an ideal customer is your marketing spend has a higher LTV to CAC, you have higher margins, all your development resources then get channeled into that one customer, and you're making a product that actually matters to them versus a little bit of a little bit of energy diffused across, hundreds of different kinds of customers. You can actually make something that matters. Focus is a superpower. And this is, again, it's the most counterintuitive things, because all of you are thinking, well, we're at the growth summit. Are you telling me to just, decrease my total addressable market? And I'm saying, yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. So ideal customer, narrow your market, and play a winnable game. Ames department store was playing not a winnable game. Northwest Arkansas, it turns out, was a winnable game. Dominate that market and then scale. And this order matters. This order matters. Win first, narrow, win, dominate, then scale. Irresistible offer. So number 2. So you have an ideal customer, irresistible offer. So Airbnb, in 2008, Airbnb was down to its last, it had 15 listings, and they had like less than $1 million in the bank. Basically, they were about to go out of business. So Brian Chesky, who's the CEO, he flew out to New York to go visit his customers, and he has 2 different kinds of customers. He has hosts and then the people who pay, the people you think of as customers. And all online retail has a 5-star rating system. So basically so he said, well, what would it take to have 1 star? He said, well, If no one shows up, you fly out to New York, you get off the plane, you go to your place and no one's there. That's 1 star. No one's ever going to rent from you again. That's a disaster. 3 stars is probably like, yeah, you ultimately got there, but you had to find the owner and call them on their cell phone and get let in. And he said, well, what would be 5 stars? And he says, all right, well, yeah, you get the person's there, you get let in right away. And the place actually looks kind of like the pictures, like it looks like it was supposed to look. And then he basically said about 5 stars, he's like, who gives a shit? Who's going to tell anyone about that experience? Yes, it's 5 stars, but you haven't really done anything. All you've done is you've delivered what you're supposed to do. So he keeps going and he says, what would 6 stars, what would 7 stars look like? Well, the place would look like the pictures. You get let in right away, and you'd have like a free surfing lesson and maybe a welcome gift. Great. So he says, well, and by the way, it only goes up to 5, but he says, well, what would 9 stars look like? Well, you'd have all those things. You'd have the surfing lesson, the place would look like it, and you'd have restaurant reservations. It's the best restaurant. That'd be amazing. And he said, all right, well, what would 11 stars look like? Well, by this point, you're met at the airport with elephants and a parade and celebrity, and you have balloons, and he's like, that would be pretty amazing. So that's what 11 stars would look like for them. And the point was not that, if you've ever rented Airbnb, at least for me, I've never been met at the airport with a parade of elephants. The point is to imagine a world that doesn't exist. To imagine a world that doesn't exist, because if you're going to be the best in the world, 5 stars is just not going to get you there. And Airbnb started to imagine some of this world that doesn't exist. This thing about kind of like your irresistible offer, this really is the punchline of being best in the world. Our standards for ourselves have to be higher than anyone could ever demand of us. Any customer would ever demand of us, any investor. Your standards have to exceed those standards of anyone else. Because no one's ever gonna come and tell you to build a product that doesn't exist. So the magic of being the best in the world is you have to use, as I said before, your psychology and your imagination and your time frame. You have to give yourself permission to say, we are going to create something that doesn't exist. No one's ever demanded. We're going to have higher expectations of ourselves than anyone else is ever going to demand of us. And that's going to take some time and some creativity. You're going to have to put time on the schedule. What it looks like is it's messy. You ask a bunch of questions, like some of these questions. Mark mentioned the first one. These first 2 are Vern Harnish questions. What does customers hate about our product? What are competitors unwilling to do? What would need to be true for us to have a 100% close rate? What would need to be true for us to have a 100% retention rate? And the last one, what would it need to be true for us to tell 10 people about our product or service? If you actually went to an Airbnb and the host gave you a gift and had a free surfing lesson, you would tell 10 people about that. But this stuff doesn't just happen. This stuff happens by you scheduling it, putting it on the calendar, asking provocative questions, and then putting it on, and then actually having the priorities that go into making these show up on your 1-page plan this quarter. No one's ever going to ask you to do anything more than 5 stars. You're going to have to demand that of yourselves because you want to be the best in the world. That's how it's going to happen. That's the only way it's going to happen. Imagination is a superpower. It's probably our most underutilized asset that we have. It's the imagination of us and everyone else on our team. And when you can consistently embark and bring that imagination to bear is the biggest part of being the best in the world. And we've gotten pretty good at this over the years at Alpine, but it just takes, there's no magic to it. You put it on the calendar, you schedule it, you get the right people in the room, you ask the right questions, and then you have to actually put those into action. So if you want to be the best in the world, you have to know your ideal customer, and you have to make a product and a service that no one's ever imagined, and no one is going to demand of you except yourself. Use your imagination to create something aspirational. Best in the world, it likely doesn't exist today, and you have to schedule those activities today. Growth is not you're probably like, okay, I'm coming to this session, I'm going out to Sonoma, and I'm gonna hear the team talk about growth. We're gonna have sessions. You're probably thinking that you're gonna be in a session. We're gonna be talking about how to optimize your SEO or digital marketing. That all matters, but upstream of that, growth is about strategy. Growth is about your product, your service. Growth is about imagination. Growth is about how do you become 3 standard deviations better than everyone. And then we'll talk about digital marketing. We're not going to talk about digital marketing until we talk about what are you selling and to whom are you selling it. Last one, Operation Crush. So this is a story about Motorola and Intel. You probably know, how many of you have heard of Intel? Okay, you probably have heard of Intel because Intel is the #1 microprocessor company in the world. They're the #1 semiconductor seller in the world. What you probably don't know is how this story started. So Intel was just a blip on the radar in 1975. Motorola was stomping on Intel. And to say that these companies were even competitors is kind of like saying my daughter Lily and LeBron James are competitors. They both play basketball, but my daughter's a 5'1" point guard on her church league. So they're in the same, she's good, but I mean, and this is kind of these two companies. Motorola had a chip that was twice as powerful and they had 10 times the revenue. And the way that the semiconductor industry worked back then is kind of how it works now, which is every couple of years, they would each company would come up with a new chip, and it would it'd be faster, right? Every 3 years, the processing speed would double, and each company would come out, and then there'd be new adoption, and all the companies that use microprocessors would have the ability to upgrade. It's kind of how it worked then. So what Intel realized is, we're never going to win this game. Like, it's not a winnable game because, Motorola's got way more assets, way more engineers, way more capacity. And by the way, they're already twice, they got a 2x head start. So they basically said, we're going to have to play a different game. Rather than winning, so you would think that the semiconductor industry is won on technology, right? I mean, what else would it be won on? There is nothing else, right? Processing speed, memory, features, that's it, right? And Intel said, well, you know what we're going to do? We don't have a choice because we're getting our ass kicked. We're going to win on sales and marketing. Like, what? In the semiconductor industry, you're going to win on sales and marketing? Yeah, that's what they're going to do. So what they did is they beat Motorola by 6 months to the market. But again, who cares? Because everyone knows Motorola is going to come out with something that's, twice as powerful. But they beat them by 6 months to the market. And then they took their entire company and built Operation Crush. They made this name up, by the way. If I were to name this, I would name it Operation Crush. You probably think I did name Operation Crush, but I didn't. But everything's going to be called Operation Crush from now on at Alpine. But Motorola actually named it themselves Operation Crush. They spent $2 million on marketing and 1,000 employees, and they had an all hands on deck assault on sales and marketing. 1,000 of their top people, not their top salespeople, the CEO, the CFO, the engineers, everybody had accounts that they went after. And they said, we want 2,000 design wins, and we got 6 months to do it. They hired Regis McKenna, which is the marketer that made all the Apple commercials a little bit later. So spent $2 million on marketing, 1,000 employees, and they won on sales and marketing. They got 2,500 design wins. They built those relationships with the customers, and they actually held off Motorola when they came out with their next chip. They used the revenue they had from those customers to reinvest in technology, and the rest is history. They became the largest semiconductor manufacturer in the world. So the game of semiconductors was not even a technology game. It was a sales and marketing game, and it was done through Operation Crush. Some of you may have seen this movie, Field of Dreams. Has anyone seen this? So the theme of the movie, I won't go into the premise of the movie because it doesn't really make any sense. I really still don't understand this movie. I'm going to build a cornfield and whatever, I don't know. But the theme of the movie is, they say this over and over, if you build it, they will come, right? They say this over and over and over in the movie. And that might be a good tagline for the movie, by the way. I'm not even sure it was. But it is the dumbest possible thing you could ever say for sales and marketing. Motorola learned this the hard way. If you build it, they will come. Turns out, nope. They build it and people didn't come. Instead, most things in this world are sold, not bought. You have to beat a path to your customer's door. And the Intel story shows this. I mean, they had an inferior product. Clearly, they were a smaller business and they sold not, the products were sold, not bought. So Operation Crush, all hands on deck sales and marketing is a strategy, not a function, meaning everyone's involved in sales and marketing. Products or services are sold, not bought. And you're going to win through A+ talent, which is a huge part of this. So the 3 principles summarized very simply. You're going to find an ideal customer. What is your version of Northwest Arkansas in your business? You're going to have an irresistible offer. What does 11 stars look like for you? What's that going to be for you? What's 11 stars going to be? And Operation Crush, what is your all-out crush strategy? You're going to spend 50% of your waking hours working, and you're going to spend 50% of your your emotional energy at work on what you're doing. And I've been running Alpine for 23 years, and 26 if you count the years in the dorm room. And I've woken up every single day trying to do something that no one else has done, and trying to figure out what that is, and trying to put our team in a position where we could do that. And 26 years into Alpine, I'm more excited about Alpine than I've ever been. And it's just it doesn't take any more time to endeavor to be the number one firm in the world. It doesn't take any more energy. It just takes a mindset shift. But the payoff of that is that you get to spend, this you get to enjoy this one wild and precious life of yours in pursuit of something magical. And the biggest payoff of that is who you get to become as a result. Because really, when we talk about growth, we're talking about growth in your businesses, but really ultimately, we're talking about the growth of you and how you get to show up on the journey and who you get to become. So I guess what I'd say in closing is, let's all spend this one wild and precious life of ours, trying to be the best in the world, and let's get after it this afternoon. So thank you so much.